interesting little nugget from today's media session with John Lynch. He said he and Kyle had to go to Jed York and ask, pretty please, can we sign Javon Hargrave? It's going to be expensive. And Jed said, yeah, I want the best, which is always nice, especially in a market where the Oakland A's exist. So God love you, Jed York, for, ever since he messed it up royally with Harbaugh and then Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, he has at least let John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan do whatever the hell they want. So I'll give him that.
Well, okay. Everybody, the fans for the most part always are pro Kyle. Lynch, they're very pro Lynch. It's always easy to rip the son of a billionaire. And so Jed's always been an easy target.
Yeah, look at me. I'm an easy target too. I'm a son of a billionaire.
There you go. But you're trying to make it so your son is the son of a billionaire.
Exactly.
No, but the Jed thing is, let's be honest about this. You can say that he made the wrong move on Harbaugh. Harbaugh was 44-19-1, and Jed and Harbaugh couldn't coexist, and they had to part ways. Okay. But since that point, he bought out Tom Sula's coaching staff. He bought out Chip Kelly's coaching staff. He went to Kyle. He's now gone every time they've asked for money for football reasons. He is there to write the check. I think Jed gets a bad rap. I think Jed has listened to his football people, and that's really all you can do. Eddie got Walsh, but Eddie hired Joe Thomas. Eddie traded 5 draft picks for O.J. Simpson, who was done at the time. Mm-hmm. One of those picks became Joe Cribbs. Eddie didn't know all. Eddie had to learn on the job. Jed had to learn on the job. But Jed at least he's listening to his football people. He's got a management structure where these guys are not trying to survive one another. Lynch and Shanahan are legitimately working together, unlike Balky and Harbaugh. So I think there's real growth there. And Jed, now granted, it's not pulling it out of his last penny. He's not pulling it out of his savings account. The NFL produces huge cash revenue, and that's where this money's coming from. But he's still willing to spend the cash when he's being told by his football people that they need the cash, and I respect them for that. I really
What's funny, though, is he was willing to spend, or his parents were, when Harbaugh was here. That coaching staff was very expensive, those position coaches. So they've always been willing to spend on football. What's interesting, and he may have been right to fire Harbaugh. The whole idea was, it's what I argue now with Kyle. Yeah, you're a good coach and you've built this team, but are you going to win a championship? And Jed looked at Harbaugh and said, no, this guy's not going to be a champion. And he might have been right. He's not like he's winning any championships over at Michigan. So if the analysis was correct, the problem was how he replaced him. Jim Tom Sula, that was a joke, defensive line coach. So what's interesting is he's fixed all that and he's back in everyone's good graces, but he's in the same position he was in 10 years ago. Really good team, NFC championships, right on the cusp, haven't gotten over the hump. What are you going to do about it, Jed? And so you could argue that he's grown, but you could also argue that he's back where he started. And it's okay, what's your next move? How are you going to – he talks about the quest for 6. He is on a quest for 1. How are you going to get 1, Jed? Because you've been on this quest for 20 years.
Well, the one thing I think links Jed and Kyle and Lynch is they're all going to be made men with Dr. John and Denise if they win.
Yeah.
John's going to be truly independent to do what he wants. Kyle's going to be truly independent and he won't be questioned. Jed himself will probably gain true independence from Dr. John and Denise if they climb this mountain and get this 6th ring. So they're all tied to the same kind of thing.
We don't really know who hired Kyle. It might have been Jed. It might have been the parents. It might have been a whole family search. I don't know. I don't know. But after what Jed did with Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, I would imagine the parents would step in and be like, you know what? This is a family project now. I'm just saying.
Well, he had to learn on the job. But in fairness, Eddie D did too. And everybody loves Eddie D. Why do they love Eddie D? Because his bottom line was their bottom line. He won titles and he spent frivolously and, all kinds of gifts and generosity, took care of his players. But what I love about Eddie, he is the impetus behind that Golden Heart Fund. Jed and this current group has pushed that forward. That's a groundbreaking, let's take care of our own kind of a program that I think you should be proud of. And there's a few other teams around the NFL that have copied it. I'm just saying, it's easy to rip Jed. Lots of people do. The reality is Jed's about winning. And he hasn't done it yet.
Right.
They've been a consistent winner. They haven't won at all. But I think that if he can climb this mountaintop, I think he'll probably have greater control over the franchise, and so will Lynch, and so will Kyle.
It's tough to be the second generation owner, especially when your uncle was like, how many owners have 5 rings in American sports? Not that many. So Eddie's he's like Kobe Bryant. How many athletes have 5 rings? We even see Clay's ultimate put down of a player. When someone's talking trash, all of a sudden he just goes,
right.
That's it. That's all he has to say. I mean, that was the Niners. 5 rings. 5. That's it. 5 rings. And Jed can't add to that. And it's like, there's no shame in that. A lot of organizations don't win Super Bowls. They haven't won Super Bowls, but he's close. He's so close. And he has people like you and me offering him great suggestions. It's no excuse. No excuse.
Well, I mean, think about it too. He's born into a family where he's had, wealth beyond his dreams his entire life. So when you have that kind of money and your future is so financially set, you're all about the ring, because the ring will validate him more than any dollar amount. So he's all about that ring. He's passionate to get it. And to me, in some ways, Jed not getting it has given him what Eddie had that he didn't have, which was this unbelievable passion. And now he's starting to develop it because out of necessity, because he knows this is his holy grail. If he climbs this hill, he'll be viewed as successful.
And to his credit, he believes that getting Javon Hargrave gives the Niners the defensive line they need to win the Super Bowl. I would just, and this is neither here nor there, I would just say, at what point is Jed York and this organization going to realize, I mean, how many years do they have to have the number 1 defense in the league and not win the Super Bowl before they realize that, like, you're not going to win the Super Bowl that way? You have to have a great offense, not a great defense. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just maybe the pendulum will swing back to defense. I think rules would have to change for that to happen, though.
I mean, all I'll say is after watching Mahomes is that the only thing that it's convinced me is that there is no shortcut. And if you're going to beat Mahomes, you better be able to score 30 points a game, and you better have impact players on all 3 levels of your defense. And I would endorse the move to pick up Hargrave, because when I watched Kinlaw get bounced around, I said, you know what?
It's bad.
That is the number 1 need of the 49ers, a dominating two-way, run player, pass player, defensive tackle who dominates. They didn't have it, and it's hard to find in the draft. So
and what's crazy is even if you have an offense that can score 30-plus points and you have playmakers at all 3 levels of your defense, you're still not going to beat Kansas City. Although they lost some guys this offseason. I mean, they're really depending on some young wide receivers next season. We'll see what happens. CJ Smooth says, if Trey is traded and Brock is average, do Lynch and Shaney get another shot to get a FQ? If Trey is traded and Brock is average, that's not good. If that happens, I don't know.
Well, that's a great question. I would say Shanahan probably, if they don't win, they probably both have 3 years before anybody internally will put any pressure. But they don't have an endless amount of time. But I would say they've got, even if this doesn't work out, they probably got 3 years, 3 to 5 years.
Ominous24 says, do you guys think Mahomes would have had the same success had Kyle drafted him? Hell no. Kyle only hurts. Poor Trey. I don't know. I mean, I don't think so, but I guess we'll never know. It's possible that Patrick Mahomes is so good you couldn't miss. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, did Reed make Mahomes or did Mahomes make Reed? I think I'm going to go with the player on that.
I'm thinking Mahomes would be good in a box with a fox on a train.
Right.
In the rain, he'd be really good. I mean, you just had to have the foresight to freaking draft him. Fish and Chips. Yeah. Fish and Chips says, there's a problem for Jed for a ring. Schemer Kyle. I kind of like that. calling him Schemer Kyle. Mark Salas says, been a fan since 62. I've lived through it all with the Niners. I must say that while I do want to see more Super Bowl trophies, I enjoy being in the hunt year after year versus what the Rams did.
Amen. I like that too. The Niners approach is better than the Rams approach, even if they don't get the ring. Because the reality is Grant doesn't want it, I don't want it, none of you want it. We don't want to look you in the eye and say, guess what? Check back with us in 2027. They're screwed on the cap because of mismanagement. You got to play this thing year to year. You got to give yourself a chance. I like the way the Niners are doing it. They're doing it with depth, and they haven't found their quarterback maybe, or maybe they have. To this point, it's eluded them, but I'd rather be them than the Rams.
Only thing I would say is the extreme of this is you get yourself in like a playoff purgatory. And you see it a lot in the NBA where a team, the way they're constructed, they're good but not good enough. And they reach a level and they can't get past it. And I think in the NFL with the Niners, what would put them in purgatory is your quarterback isn't good enough. Your offensive line isn't good enough. Even if your quarterback were good enough, you couldn't keep him healthy. So burden of proof is on them to show that that's not the case. But that's what I would argue, is that they're bordering on a playoff purgatory team that's going to be in the mix every freaking year because of that defense and what they have. But it's just a flawed construction. Maybe I'm wrong. Niners Daddy says, oh, go ahead.
All I was going to say is I like their approach the last couple of years where they're getting a lot of day 3 picks and a lot of picks after the draft. They are incredibly deep. So if you're so deep, then you can spend a boatload in free agency on any one need that pops up. So I kind of like their approach. It's hard to replicate. It's hard to find guys as undrafted players and have them be good players. But Mostert and others, Aziz and others, Givens, and I mean, they've done it. So hopefully they can continue doing it.
I mean, they got the left tackle. They got the running back, the fullback, the tight end, the wide receivers, the DN, the D tackle, the linebacker, the safety, the corner. They need this quarterback. They have everything. But until you get the quarterback, what are you? A contender, a pretender? It's up to you. Niners Daddy says, how did John and Kyle fall out of love with Trey Lance so quickly? 3 first-round picks and dumping on him after 4 starts is wild. Is it that they fell out of love with Trey or that they fell madly in love with Brock Purdy after the 3rd date? That could be the case. 8th date. Could have been a good courtship.
I just think Brock took it. He went out there and took it. And the same way he took it, if Trey Lance gets on the field this year and does the same thing, we may be talking about Trey Lance and no more about Brock Purdy. Brock got an opportunity. He ran with it. If Trey gets that opportunity this year and he's throwing for 300 yards and the Niners are 4-0, Brock's not coming back in.
The way I look at it is like Brock Purdy's that AAA pitcher you brought up just because someone was hurt and he threw a no-hitter. And you're like, well, damn, I didn't know he could do that, but he threw a no-hitter at his debut. So you know what? He's going to stay in the rotation one more week and we'll see where this goes. Like, that's essentially what happened. Like, how do you pull the plug on Brock Purdy now? You can't. I mean,
you lose.
He did too well. He's pitching a no-hitter. He got hurt, but he still essentially hasn't given up a base hit. So let it ride. See what happens. Sometimes, these AAA pitchers come back down to earth, but he might be the truth. We'll see.
You know who's the biggest advocate for Purdy in the room that I could tell, even though he tried to do it diplomatically because he had such a tight relationship with Garoppolo, was Kittle. And the second biggest Purdy guy in the room, I thought, was Ayuk. And why is that? Because those guys are literally going to make more money and probably add another level to their house because of Brock Purdy.
Drewish guy, thank you for the $5. Isn't Drewish a joke from Spaceballs? I think it's a Spaceballs joke. I could be wrong. I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but I think it. Anyway, that's the show. Thanks for watching. Larry, what are you doing? You never stop. What are you doing the rest of the day?
What am I doing the rest of the day? I'm doing some videos on some of these things that have happened, so look for that on the channel. My son's doing a great job helping me with that. And later on today, you know what I was going to talk to today, but we're actually doing it tomorrow, is FP Santangelo from the Giants. Talk a little Giants baseball. We had Ned Coletti on last night. Wayne Breezy's going to join me on the show this week. The great Crocker is going to be on the show this week.
Nice. He's kicking my ass in the finals, but There's no shame in that. Gotta love Eric Crocker.
Well, see, you didn't play for the Jets.
Nah, I didn't play for the Jets.
You didn't play, or did you? You might have.
Nah, I wish. I want to challenge Eric Crocker to a 40-yard dash, though, although I think I'm too old to prove my point. So maybe I won't.
Yeah, don't do that.
Maybe I won't.
Run.
Maybe getting waxed by Eric Crocker in the finals is enough embarrassment for one year.